Pretty much every piece of technology we use is the end result of centuries of people trying to solve problems. And the handgun, it's no different. It's a story that takes us from hand-forged iron all the way to aerospace polymers, from unstable, smoky black powder to guns with digital brains. So let's dive right into this incredible 300-year journey of innovation.
I mean, that's a huge leap, right? Blackbeard's pistol to a gun that reads your fingerprint. The story of how we got from point A to point B is really a story about solving a series of critical, often life-or-death problems, one right after another. And that's the big question we're going to tackle today.
Okay, so let's start our story in the early 18th century. Think about it, this is the golden age of piracy, the dawn of empires. And the go-to technology, the dominant firearm, was the flintlock. For its time, it was a real marvel of mechanical ignition. But, and this is a big but, it had some really serious issues.
So, if you wanted the absolute best of the best from this era, you'd be looking at something like the Queen Anne pistol. This was the pinnacle of flintlock design. It was favored by guys like the pirate, Blackbeard himself. They were elegant, sophisticated, and actually surprisingly accurate because of a clever breech-loading system. But, for all its beauty, it had the exact same fatal flaws as every other flintlock out there.
All right, so here's how it was supposed to work. You pull the trigger, a piece of flint smacks against steel, sparks fly into a little pan of fine powder, whoosh, that ignites, and a jet of flame shoots through a tiny hole to set off the main charge in the barrel. It's simple, it's mechanical, and yeah, in perfect conditions, it worked. But let's be real, combat rarely happens in perfect conditions.
So it all boils down to two huge problems. First, that exposed priming powder was totally at the mercy of the weather. A humid day, a gust of wind, a little bit of rain, and suddenly your gun is useless, just a piece of metal. Second, you got exactly one shot, and after that, well, you're basically holding a very clumsy club while you tried to fumble through a really slow reloading process. These were the big problems that absolutely had to be solved.
And then came the 19th century, and with it, the solutions. They were driven by these radical breakthroughs in both chemistry and industrial manufacturing. This right here is where the handgun really starts to look like a modern weapon.
So, that first problem, the weather sensitivity, that got solved by chemistry. The invention of the percussion cap in the 1820s was an absolute game changer. It was basically a tiny copper cup with a little dab of something called fulminate of mercury inside, and this stuff explodes when you crush it, sending a jet of flame right into the main powder charge. No more exposed powder pan, suddenly you have a self-contained, weatherproof ignition system. It was finally reliable.
Okay, so check this out. This new chemical reliability, it was the key that unlocked the door to solving that second big problem, the single shot. A guy named Samuel Colt, his whole idea for a mass-produced revolving pistol just wouldn't have worked without the percussion cap. Can you imagine a cylinder full of loose powder and sparks? That's a recipe for disaster. But with those safe, self-contained percussion caps, the repeater handgun was finally born.
Okay, so let's recap. The gun is now reliable, and it can fire multiple shots. Things are looking good, but there's another fundamental problem that's been around for centuries: the fuel, the gunpowder itself. We're still dealing with black powder.
And when you put them side by side, it's night and day. Black powder was nasty stuff. It was corrosive, it was inefficient, and it left this thick, gummy residue that could just jam a weapon solid. But most importantly, it produced this massive cloud of white smoke. Then comes smokeless powder in the late 19th century, and it solves everything. It burned cleaner, it produced way higher pressures for more power and velocity, and, well, like the name says, it was pretty much smokeless.
And here's why that mattered so much. There's a great quote from Safferland. Constant firing of black powder made it difficult to see the opposition, as constant firing would cause a literal fog of war to hang on the battlefield. That just says it all, right? The smoke wasn't just annoying, it was a huge tactical problem. It gave away your position and literally created a fog of war that blinded everyone. Moving to smokeless powder wasn't a choice, it was an absolute necessity for modern armies.
All right, let's hit the fast-forward button and jump to the late 20th century. We've got reliable, repeating, smokeless powder handguns. They work. So the new problems to solve are all about efficiency. How do you make a handgun that's simpler, cheaper to churn out on a massive scale, and maybe even more reliable? The answer, surprisingly, came from plastic.
But here's a fun fact. Glock wasn't actually the first company to try making a polymer-framed handgun. Nope. That honor belongs to Heckler & Koch with their VP-70. So, why did one become this global icon that everybody knows, while the other is basically a footnote in a history book?
Well, sometimes the internet just cuts right to the chase. There's a Reddit user who said the VP70 was widely regarded as a giant, steaming pile of shit. And honestly, that kind of sums it up. The simple reason it failed is that it just wasn't a very good gun. It had this clunky design with a heavy slide and really harsh recoil, and it had a trigger pull that was just famously awful. It proved the concept of a polymer frame could work, sure, but it left the door wide open for someone else to actually do it right.
And boy did Glock do it right. First, they combined a simple, elegant, and incredibly reliable design with the super low production cost of an injection-molded polymer frame. But then came the marketing genius. They went to police departments all across America and offered them a crazy deal. Trade in your old revolvers and metal frame pistols, and we'll give you brand new Glocks for little to no cost. It was an absolute masterstroke. It put their gun in the hands of professionals everywhere, and of course, public demand followed right behind.
And that brings us right into the 21st century. The modern handgun is reliable, it holds a lot of rounds, and it's efficient to produce. So what's the next big problem to solve? Well, in our digital world, the new frontier is all about unauthorized use. The big question becomes, how do you make sure a gun can only be fired by its actual owner?
And make no mistake, this isn't some niche, fringe idea. The smart gun market is projected to grow by over $116 million between 2023 and 2028. That's a lot of money. This is a serious technological and financial push, and it's all driven by the demand for better safety and security.
And the growth here is steady and significant. We're looking at a compound annual growth rate, that's the year-over-year growth rate over a specific period, of more than 7%. Now, for a brand new technology and what is a very traditional industry, that kind of number signals real, consistent, and even accelerating interest from everyone. Consumers, law enforcement, investors, they're all focused on solving this problem.
So, who's driving all this demand? Well, it's overwhelmingly North America, making up a massive 61% of the global market. The ongoing debates around things like gun safety, preventing child access, and stopping stolen firearms from being used are really prominent here, and that makes North America the primary engine pushing smart gun development forward.
So what exactly are we talking about when we say smart gun? Well, the technology mainly uses two methods. There's RFID, which means you need a paired device, like a special ring or a watch, to be near the gun to unlock it. And then there's biometrics, which you're probably familiar with, most commonly a fingerprint reader built right into the grip. The goal for both is exactly the same. Make the gun totally inert, a paperweight, to anyone but the authorized user. But locking a gun isn't the only way to make it smart. The next step in this evolution isn't just about preventing a bad outcome, like an unauthorized shot. It's about ensuring a good one, like making a perfect shot every single time. And you can see exactly where we're headed when you look at the US Army's new rifle scope. I mean, this thing isn't just glass. It's a full-on fire control system. It's got an integrated laser rangefinder, an onboard ballistic computer that's calculating for temperature and air pressure, and a digital display that literally just tells the soldier where to aim. It even communicates wirelessly with the rest of the squad. It's basically a digital brain for your rifle, and it's designed to solve the age-old problem of human error.
So here we are. From the single, unreliable shot of a flintlock, we've gone on this incredible 300-year journey, solving for weather, then for speed, for mass production, and now for security, and even for human error. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's the next seemingly impossible problem that this technology is going to try to solve?